Let's return now to the United States, where the reaction continues, the analysis on the polling and all sorts of other responses to Kamala Harris being now the frontrunner to be the Democratic nominee for president. Let's bring in the University of Sydney political scientist, Professor Simon Jackman. What a week. We've spoken a few times over the last week since the attempted assassination, the convention, now the sitting president withdrawing from the race. Simon, this is unbelievable what we've seen the last week. And now Kamala Harris, the favourite to be the Democratic nominee. Just give me your helicopter view of the impact of this now. Will it make the race more competitive?
Kieran, yes, I think on balance, yes. It is hardly one-way traffic, though. So let's begin with the upside. The upside, this re-energizes the Democratic base. We've seen that already in the fundraising numbers, that amazing $81 million raised in 24 hours. Looks like 880,000 people giving about $100 each. That's an amazing out-of-the-blocks performance for Harris. They need that money to stay competitive against the Trump campaign. The Democratic base were the first to endorse the Congressional Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus. The party is starting to unite, and I'd say for all practical purposes has united around Harris. Check number one. That's great. They need that if they're going to be anywhere near competitive in the states where they need to be competitive. Now, on the other hand, Harris is going to really struggle in those Rust Belt states, the three must-win: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. You can see the Trump campaign, the Hulk Hogan endorsement, the Wrestling Federation CEO introducing Trump, going with two white guys, Trump and J.D. Vance. They have a strategy of how they're going to win those states with white working class, predominantly men, coming over. Harris does not help bring back those votes in a way that guys like that, and guys we're talking about largely, could contemplate voting for Biden. This is a real challenge, how now Harris grows beyond the Democratic base in those key swing states. That's what this election, I think, is fundamentally going to turn on, Kieran.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll get the counter to that, so that white working class vote. What about, and there's a significant black vote in, say, a city like Detroit. So will it get more people out to vote? Will it boost the turnout?
I tend to think so. I think what Harris has to do is recreate the Biden coalition of 2020. And it was, Kieran, we're talking 60,000 votes across 3 states or something like that, right? The last 2 elections have been so close in those swing states. It is a turnout drag race where you are literally pulling those last couple of thousand votes are deciding the presidency of the United States. And yes, getting African Americans out is really key. Harris presumably will do that. I think there are live questions, frankly, to how well she plays with minority men, both in my own research and anecdotally, having lived in the United States for 25 years. I remember that when Hillary Clinton ran, these questions, or, is the country ready for a female president? You hear that from young men of color. It's a really interesting phenomenon in the United States. It's that constituency that is dispositionally Democratic, but nonetheless has this social, cultural qualm about women in leadership roles. That's interesting. On the other hand, Gretchen Whitmer is governor of Michigan, so maybe that bridge has been crossed. But it is very delicate work, Kieran, and we're talking literally at the end of the day, almost beyond the limits of any reasonable person do analysis when we're talking about 10 to 20,000 votes deciding these key states. This is why I think so much depends on her having a great rollout. Unit in the party is key, and I think they've checked that box. That is a key platform for winning this turnout drag race between now and November.
The turnout drag race, it's a great way to put it. And then you've got the other things like, we'll say Donald Trump, he's chosen J.D. Vance as his running mate, and super articulate, gave a strong speech at the convention and really appeals to that Rust Belt constituency. What about Kamala Harris? Who does she choose as her running mate?
Yeah, I think they have to balance out the ticket, as we say in American politics. And I think Either it's Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. He clearly has one elected office statewide in Pennsylvania. Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, the partner of Gabby Giffords, now a senator from the state of Arizona. Again, another state that's become critical in US politics. I think he would be an outstanding choice. Military background, space shuttle pilot, impeccable CV. That would be a great choice. You got Pritzker on screen there, Illinois, and extremely wealthy independently. I tend to think not Gavin Newsom, someone from California, the left coast. I don't think that helps you. And I don't know that you need or necessarily want two women on the ticket. With Gretchen Whitmer, I'm not quite sure she'd be a net positive. But I think Harris gets to run by virtue of her own ethnicity, her own story, her history-making candidacy as an African-American woman, a woman of color becoming the presidency, balancing that out. But the other thing is she gets to run really hard now, and this is another good news story for the Democrats. By virtue of her being a woman, abortion and reproductive rights can be put right back at the top of the issue agenda. I think she's far more comfortable talking about that issue than Joe Biden was, number one. And there's just a lot of votes in that for Democrats. And Republicans have been walking back from the position they'd backed themselves into. Vance has not got a great story to tell. His previous pronouncements on the abortion question are wildly unpopular in the electorate at large. They've got an attack angle there. And I think the thing about women voters is that they're 52% of the electorate pretty much in every state.
Yeah.
If you can mobilize women as well, perhaps offsetting some of the problems you've got with minority men not as enthusiastic about a female candidacy. And again, Kieran, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about these things
who's going to help her,
themselves
though,
out and
on the borders?
Yep.
But because we spoke about that as a potential vulnerability, a real vulnerability for Harris is her being the border czar, as Trump and Vance call her, and 11 million illegals in the United States. That is a potent issue. How does she deal with that? And can a running mate help her try and respond to what is clearly a weakness for her?
I think you're absolutely right. It's clearly a weakness. So let me enthusiastically agree with the premise of your question. Check that box. And clearly, if you're the Trump-Vance campaign, you are going hard at that. They've already loaded the gun, so to speak. How heavily immigration figured in Trump's acceptance speech at the convention, number one. Number two, I think this is where Mark Kelly from Arizona offers real credibility. He has been, as a Democratic senator from a border state, running against his own president and vice president, essentially, in the US Senate. He has staked out a position where he's been advocating effectively and forcefully for a tougher policy coming from a state like Arizona.
Okay.
I think putting him on the ticket might help deflect some of these concerns that a Harris administration is going to be a continued record of underperformance on this issue that is a really big deal, a really salient and potent issue in American politics right now, and one that on net plays extremely well for Trump and Vance.
Simon, great to get your insights as always. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.